Hi, welcome to the show Food for Life. And we were discussing about this one, about toxic metals, whether these things are toxic or harmless. Let's evaluate few things. I want to start something with the aluminium first. And chemically speaking, aluminium is a light metal. It occurs naturally in the foods, and the amount found in the plants are generally higher than the animal foods. This is what I was not aware about that. The plant has got more aluminum than the animal food. In the case of plants, when I'm talking about level of aluminum is related to the local soil and atmospheric conditions. Aluminum is used to make beverage cans, pots, pans, airplanes, siding and roofing in the foil. We use aluminum foils to keep our food warm. Powdered metal aluminum is used as explosives and fireworks. We have usually festivals and New Year just happened. All the fireworks and all that they have powdered aluminum metal in that. Aluminum is found in consumer products, including the antacids, astringents. Buffered aspirin also contains aluminum. You have some food additives. You have something like antiperspirants. Antiperspirants are basically a big, you have something high levels of aluminum. The problem with the antiperspirants is they just go and block the sweat glands. Usually they are using for the axilla. The sweat glands are blocked with this aluminum, and we have reasons to believe this is one of the causes of the breast cancer, where we are able to see this axilla breast sweat glands. You have got this is called apocrine glands, and the breast also is apocrine gland, and you have got the blocking that is not a good idea at all. Antacids, I must tell you, it contains about 300 to 600 milligrams of aluminum hydroxide, which is approximately about 100 plus 100 to 200 milligrams of elemental aluminum per tablet in a 5 ml of liquid. See, the antacids is a big thing. I've been talking about this particular thing. People are routinely on antacids and all that. Aluminum, I can tell you, it's such a neurotoxic thing. It is enough to cause Alzheimer's also. So whatever geriatric age patients, we see them taking that gelatin and all that. We strongly recommend not to use that particular thing because this particular thing, Digene, gelatin and all that. Now there are advertisements over. Also, people tend to take this particular stuff. And if I can tell you from a rooftop, this kind content of manganese, aluminum into the hydroxide into that substance, I'm sure everyone will be being have to think. I was telling about buffered aspirin containing 10 to milligram, 10 to 20 milligrams of aluminum, and here the kind is there's a kind of accumulation. You're not taking for a single time. You keep on taking over months or something like that. That makes a problem. Even vaccines has got about 0.85 milligrams per dose, which is aluminum. Uh, big things. In 1960s and 70s, there were estimates of the daily intake of aluminum ranged in the published literature from 1 to 160 milligrams per person per day. Uh, Again, when you go back to the history, in 66, the year I was born, Tipton analyzed aluminum intake and excretion of two subjects for 30 days and found that the mean balances, meaning is easily excreted. So intake and excretion was absolutely perfect. There were not much this one. We used to have a aluminum, but the excretion also used to be there. Um, Coming to the major contributors of the dietary aluminum are the grains and grain products, dairy products, including milk, cheese, and yogurt. Yogurt, desserts, and beverages also high on aluminum. Consumption of other foods contain elevated aluminum levels, like spices and herbs. Pickled cucumbers can also dramatically increase dietary intake of aluminum. We have the kind of salt which is called free flowing salt, and all this salt is free flowing salt because salt is basically, it's a very hygroscopic thing. A normal salt, if you leave in the thing, it tries to absorb moisture from the atmosphere water, and it becomes a cake. So there is a decaking agent which is used in the salt to see that there is a free flow of salt. And this decaking agent has got something like aluminium. So beware of this thing called aluminium. We had seen, I was telling about fresh vegetables having 5 to 9.5 ppm. We have demonstrated in the cow's milk it is zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.8 milligrams per liter. And yes, I was here. I need to tell you, the meat and organ meat, whatever was tested, was just zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.6 ppm. So we have aluminum concentration in the food. The vegetarian food has got higher aluminum concentration, and fresh vegetables and cow's milk has got high, whereas non-vegetarian food doesn't have that particular thing. Um, so average aluminum content of daily food intake is about 2 to 100 milligrams per kg body weight. When you the Again, the problem is the cooking utensils with aluminum is a big issue here. You have got most of the vessel people who cook the food and all in aluminum vessels, and that's a big issue. Salts, I already told you about the salts. I am can always go on and on. Food additives, antacids, antiviral medications, cosmetics, and a multitude of pharmaceutical preparations are blamed for this increase in aluminum exposure. We need to have this particular thing. It's important to recognize that certain aluminum containing non-prescription drugs can increase daily aluminum intake by a factor of 10 to 100. So why this is aluminum is important? What exactly aluminum, and there's a see, aluminum is found in small quantities human and animal tissues, in the blood and urine, but there is no evidence that this element is essential for any metabolic functions of in the human and animals. When we discuss about this, I tell magnesium, selenium, you have got good metal, calcium. There is evidence that these elements are essential for metabolic function. Whereas aluminum, there is no evidence yet that it is essential for this. Um, because again, there are few reasons. Intestinal absorption was not considered to be poor of aluminum. So that's the reason aluminum health problem was not recognized. Aluminum was not recognized as a health problem for a long time. Uh, we with this late things with the iron with the things what we are seeing nowadays, we are finding it because of the modern habits as and this one contamination. We see this is a constant problem now. Uh, the Henry Schroeder has stated that the tissue of modern man contains considerably more aluminum than previous generations, largely because aluminum compounds are commonly used in the food processing industry. Animal experiments done in 1942 indicate that small quantities of aluminum causes electrical stimulation of brain, which can induce epileptic seizures. The injection of aluminum salts cause senile dementia in animals and exacerbates symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. Animal studies from the University of Toronto showed that injections of aluminum salts cause learning disabilities in cats. So these are all the study kind of stuff where we have medical researcher, we are proving that brain cells of Alzheimer patients contain 4 to 6 times the amount of aluminum found in normal healthy brains, despite the fact The major part of the aluminum is excreted by the body. Medical research reveals that excess aluminum is deposited in the lungs, kidneys, thyroid, and brain. Laboratory tests found that when cerebral tissue comes with contact with aluminum salts, symptoms of poisoning occurs. So the test done on a worker in the aluminum industry who suffered from advanced encephalopathy produced aluminum concentrations 20 times above normal. It's a big thing. There are there are different agencies like European Food Safety Authority states that aluminum is accumulative in human tissue and that aluminum has shown neurotoxicity in patients undergoing dialysis which chronically expose them to high levels of aluminum. Uh, See, these are the things which we believe was a kind of thing. We understood what is this particular thing which aluminum has to do. And the person going for dialysis has got they have established a weekly intake of 1 milligrams per kg body weight uh, per week for aluminum. See, tolerable like weekly intake. They have been prescribed that particular stuff, and I believe this is no longer realistic. They are you 2 to 3 milligrams per kg is the kind of thing. Um, but all these things, people who has a high burden, 50% of the body burden in the skeleton and things as such. Um, these are the in the bones as well as this one, uh, bones, lungs is found in the brain is a another big this particular stuff. So we need to there are no set standard of things. We try to, as a physicians, we try to work with the symptoms of iron overload, and the symptoms of iron overload may be something like constipation, colic, you have got nausea, you have got something like gastrointestinal irritation, you have got some loss of appetite, and simple things like that. And loss of energy is a very common thing. You have got something like senile dementia, you have got behavioral changes, you have got some ataxia kind of stuff. You have excessive perspiration is also a sign of aluminum overload, which I was not aware about that. And apart from that, there is a thing called slurred speech, which is also a cause. So Aluminium again, it's a very contentious thing, and I just want to add here that yes, it is found so ubiquitously. Even it is found in the aluminum is found in the vaccines. The most of the vaccines they contain aluminum, which is added as an adjuvant. The adjuvant is a substance which boosts the ability of vaccine to induce an immune response. It acts locally at the site of injection and as a signal of immune system, drawing a heightened response to the injected vaccine. Without adjuvants, ironically, without adjuvants, we believe you need a larger dose of vaccine to induce your immune response. So, adjuvants are added to decrease the content of lesser dose of vaccine. Uh, but again, this aluminum in vaccines is handled by the fish body quite differently than the aluminum in the intravenous solutions come from the studies looking at the intramuscular injection. So rather than entering the bloodstream directly and accumulating in tissues, as with intravenous injected aluminum, intramuscular injected aluminum contains are firstly dissolved by organic acid in the interstitial fluids and are rapidly eliminated. Again, if that is the case, we need not worry about the aluminum vaccination because I certainly believe it is not the kind of thing. Anything aluminum injected parenterally into the muscle or into the thing, it is going to stay for a long time. It is what happens is that it gets into the blood-brain barrier easily crossed, and with the kind of we are talking about aluminum, which is nano aluminum now. it's a cause of worry. And I certainly believe that we need to be take this with a pinch of salt. And yeah, um, I'm not very sure if aluminum will cause birth defects or animals or people, but young kids or people who had issues with neurodevelopmental areas, and they are definitely this aluminum is going to be a very very problematic thing, and you need to be really working on some stuffs where you need to look into how to decrease the intestinal absorption also of this aluminum. We need to work it out. So all things said and done, things are slowly we are trying to raise this level of awareness to the people, and because this bone disease caused by high levels of aluminum has been seen with children with kidney disease. Bone disease are also seen with children taking medicines containing aluminum. Bone damage caused by aluminum in stomach prevent. See, this is a in the what happens is that you have got high levels of aluminum in your food and all that. It prevents the absorption of phosphate, and once this phosphate absorption is prevented from the stomach, phosphate is the one thing which is required for the healthy bones, and this is one of the things which we believe. We see children with osteomalacia and all that, osteoporosis with this particular stuff. And yes, I certainly believe that we have to keep a bar on this particular stuff. And yes, all these things has to be properly looked into, and we need to work out on reducing the exposure of aluminium. Make sure drinking water doesn't contain aluminium, and you need to avoid food and drinks in aluminum cans. Fruit and vegetable juices can be acidic, and lemonades and colas are generally acidic, which potentially leaches aluminum from the can into the drink. So you need to be careful about this particular stuff. Avoiding large amounts of processed food containing uh, aluminum additives is also to be avoided. You should see that cooking should not be done in the aluminum vessels, because all the acidic foods which are cooked in the aluminum vessels, they leach the aluminum into the food, and certainly avoid this antacids, aluminum rich medications, IV feeding solutions, or total parental nutrition containing aluminum. And yes, this TNP parental nutrition also, a liter contains not less than 25 micrograms of aluminum. Avoid simple stuffs, nutritional supplements that may contain aluminum, and try to see that how you can always. This is how I have been working on the thing, and feel I see it's a kind of we try to work with some detox. Aluminum detox is so easy. It doesn't require much big IV drips and all that. We do some put very very simple ways. We try to help in taking out the aluminum from the body. It is just by a very simplistic methodologies, by changing the diet and trying to work with some simple, give some resins and simple things, and the patients they comply so well with what we are working on this. Uh, so the thing is, the most important thing when it comes to the when we are talking about toxicology, the first is avoid the ongoing toxicity. The first treatment part should be avoid this ongoing toxicity. Pick up what is causing you this aluminum toxicity. Apart from that, we need to work on supporting the digestion by supporting microbiological environment, which try to work with the which improves the gut permeability. Intestinal flora makes a big difference here. and it is a first line of defense. If you have intestinal good flora, that takes care of the aluminum, whatever toxins they come, they can be taken out like that. So foods that contain yogurt has to be properly taken in a big ways. Again, I can always tell you something. Healthy oils, the linseed oil improves digestion, which is definitely helpful in natural elimination of these things. Children should avoid this aluminum-rich drinks. Um, and drinking water should be low in aluminum, but higher in calcium, because the higher the calcium, it reduces aluminum uptake of the body. If the renal secretion function is sluggish, we add moderate amounts of simple vitamin B6 can help in a big way. Aluminum exposure, overexposure to oral intake is always rare, but if ever it's there, it requires chelation. We need to work on that. There are some areas where there's industrial exposure to the high levels of aluminum, the concentrations. You need a physician who is trained in metal detoxification. So, conclusion, I would like to say that yes, we need to be aware of all these things. We need to be, since aluminum is so ubiquitous, I have seen aluminum coming to the, there are some things you have got, it's ubiquitous in that moment. It's there in the food, water, it's there in the medicines, it's there in the cosmetics. You go anywhere, you have got aluminum. So you need to be careful about this and try to avoid as much as possible and keep trying to keep your detox systems as well as nutritional things. You should not be deprived of nutrition. So with that particular stuff, you can always make a big inroads, and this is how I believe aluminum can be a big deterrent for a good health. And try to look into what antacid you are taking. Try to look into what is the kind of vegetables with this particular stuff you are taking, and see that this is important asset. Uh, Food is a major kind of thing. And if we are able to work out on all these points, what I have tried to work it out, I'm sure it will be a healthy beginning